My boyfriend and I have been dating for over 3 years. His birthday was coming up and I wanted it to be special. I decided to pick out a day where I went to the mall and got things that I thought he'd like and put it all together as a big present. While I was there, I ran into a friend of his named Matt. I told Matt what I was planning, and since he was his close friend, I asked him if he'd be willing to help me pick out some things. Matt of course agreed, so we hit up some shops to find things that we both thought my boyfriend would really like. My boyfriend and I had recently moved in together and I knew that he was working, but his job's hours are always changing, so I didn't know when he'd get home. I didn't want him to catch me red-handed with all of the things before I hid them, so I asked him what he was doing and when he'd be home. That's when he told me that he was already off work and hanging out with Matt at the bars. This immediately stopped me in my tracks because there was no way he'd be hanging out with him since Matt was just a few feet away from me in the store. When I told Matt, he was confused too because he was never asked by my boyfriend to hang out at the bar. We have a very trusting relationship, so normally I'd believe him, but in this case I knew that it was a lie. I wasn't sure what to do because he's never lied to me before, or at least I've never caught him in a lie like this. That's when I decided to go home and wait for him. Part 2 of how my boyfriend lied to me about who he was with. When my boyfriend got home, he acted completely normal. I asked him how it was hanging out with Matt at the bar. He told me about his day and told me how him and Matt just grabbed a few drinks nonchalantly. This made me angry because I knew he was lying, but I wasn't sure how to bring up the truth. I also didn't know how to tell him that I was hanging out with Matt without bringing up that I was also shopping for his birthday present. I tried to give him the benefit of the doubt and let it be. However, when we were laying in bed later that night, I couldn't take it anymore and confronted him. I told him I ran into Matt at the mall when he texted me, so I know it wasn't Matt who he was hanging out with. He quickly got frazzled and I could tell he was trying not to tell me something. However, this only made me more curious. Finally, he told me to wait a minute and he left the room. When he came back, I sat up and he came to my side of the bed. He took out a box from behind his back and got on one knee. My eyes widened. He confessed that he was out ring shopping for me because he knew I was the person he wanted to spend the rest of his life with. We had a weekend getaway planned for his birthday and he was going to propose to me on one of the days we were there. I was shocked. Of course I said yes and tackled him in a big hug. We went on our trip together and it was amazing. Now it's a funny story that we tell everyone.
I was at my godfather's funeral, and after the service they had food. So I was sitting down eating and my mom comes up to me and she's like, "Hey, I want you to meet someone." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, who is it?" And she tells me that it's one of her guy cousins that I've never met before. So I go up to him and I'm trying to be polite and I'm like, "Hi, nice to meet you." And he looks at me and he's like, "Oh, you're the girl that got kidnapped, huh?" He tells me this in front of everybody. And I awkwardly just say, "Oh, yeah." And then I look at my mom like, what the hell? Then he asked me, he's like, "So what happened out there? Why were you kidnapped?" And guys, I'm already going through it. I don't want to sit down and talk about my trauma. And mostly because he's like laughing about it and like smiling about it like if it's funny. So I start thinking, I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna be talking to ignorant people. So I just walked away. And my mom comes after me and she's like, "You embarrassed me." And I'm like, girl, he should be embarrassed himself. He needs to read the room.
So when I was a kid, I used to live in apartments, and I remember this one apartment complex that we moved into, there weren't a lot of black people there. And the black people that were there were like, "Hey, we're really surprised that we even were able to live here because the apartment manager's racist as shit." My mom's like, no. How could she? How could she be racist? So then, yeah, she started showing her colors. My brother and I are like twins, so he would go outside, play all the time, and the apartment manager, Charlotte was her name, would call my mom, talk about do-do-do-do-do. "Hello? Your son is throwing rocks and pine cones at people's homes. We can't have him doing that." So then my brother would always get in trouble because that's kind of not out of his character. He was kind of a little bit. But I remember one time we went to the mall and, you know, me and my family having a good time. It was me, my mom, and my brother. And we're all having a little kiki. We kikiing it up. So I remember the apartment manager called my mom and the apartment manager's like, "Hey, your son's doing this again." And my mom's looking dead at my brother. Like, he's like directly across from her. And my mom's like, "My son is sitting directly across from me." And the manager, like, you can hear her blushing over the phone. You can hear how red her face was because she was embarrassed because she was threatening to call the police on my freaking brother. And mind you, I think we were like 10 years old at the time. So my mom's cussing her out because obviously that wasn't my brother. Whoever she was talking about wasn't my brother. And we would ask people around the apartments, they're like, "Hey, do you have any kids throwing stuff at your windows?" Everybody said no. So she's just making shit up at this point. So everyone in the apartment, it's not like she just did this to us. No, baby, it was the whole population of black people there, and there wasn't many. So I remember one time we went without water at our apartments for like a month. I'm not even kidding. I wish I was exaggerating. A month. Because the manager sucked so bad. So all the people rallied up and got this bitch fired. Fired.
This is why you should think twice about making your friend your surrogate. I always knew I wanted to have a few kids. I've dreamt of being a mom for as long as I can remember. However, due to a medical condition, carrying a baby isn't an option for me. I wasn't going to let this stop me, so I started looking into surrogacy. This process was really expensive and a lot harder than I thought. After months of searching, my best friend Ashley volunteered to be my surrogate for me and my fiance. She knew how much we wanted to start a family. I was so excited and extremely grateful. Ashley and I had been friends for 8 years, and I couldn't think of anyone better to be our surrogate. My fiance and I decided to ask Ashley to move in with us so that we could all be there for each other throughout the pregnancy. Everything was going great until it wasn't. Ashley started making a few comments to my fiance that made me really uncomfortable. One night, she asked him to give her a back massage. When he hesitated, she said to him, "I'm carrying your child, you should do whatever I ask you to." I let this comment go, even though it didn't sit right with me. Another night, she referred to herself as his baby mama, which made me furious. I told her she was overstepping, and she laughed and told me she was just kidding. It only got worse from here. Part 2 of why you should think twice about making your friend your surrogate. Ashley continued to overstep throughout the surrogacy process. One night, she told me she didn't like the name that I picked out for my baby and started giving me recommendations on what she thought the name should be. As it got closer to the due date, Ashley told me that she had thoughts about moving in permanently and raising the baby with my fiance and I, which was never part of the plan. When I shut that down, she seemed bitter. I could tell she had developed feelings for my fiance, which made it even more awkward. I knew I made a terrible mistake picking her as my surrogate. After my daughter was born, Ashley stayed with us for a little while longer, even though it wasn't part of our initial agreement. She wanted to spend every second holding our new baby girl, and I could tell that she was getting overly attached. We decided to tell Ashley our observations and told her that she had to move out before things got worse. She didn't take this well, and when she left, she told us that she didn't want to hear from us anymore. A couple years later, Ashley reached out to us and asked if she could come over and see us. When she came over, she told my daughter right in front of me that she was her real mom and that she'd find out when she was older. I couldn't believe it and immediately asked her to leave. Luckily, I haven't heard from her since.
Okay, story time. So I work at a jewelry store, and today a man came in looking for a gift for his wife for their 10th year anniversary. He ended up picking out a piece that said, "My beautiful wife." And I said, "Anything else for you today?" And he said, "No, that's it for her, but I do want to make another purchase using a separate credit card. And could you possibly create a different account for me?" And I said, "Sure, what are you looking for?" And he said, "Do you have anything that says girlfriend?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Perfect, I'll take it. And do you have anything that says happy 1 year anniversary to go with it?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Perfect, I'll take it." So I boxed everything up all nice and I put them in their respected bags. He had me mark a K for Kristen on the bottom of his wife's bag and an L for Laura on the bottom of his girlfriend's bag. I put pretty bows on them. I handed it to him. I said, "They're gonna love it. Have a nice day." And he said, "Thank you." And shit, I just remembered that his wife's name is Laura and his girlfriend's name is Kristen. I must have mixed up the bags. Oops.